Jude Brooks, a homeless black man worn down by hunger and despair, clutched his last $20, the only chance he had to buy a bus ticket for a job interview and rebuild his life. Suddenly, he saw a girl soaked from head to toe, her clothes muddy, her hands trembling as she begged him for help. He hesitated, torn between survival and compassion, but in the end, he still handed her that crumpled bill, leaving her deeply moved. What he didn't know was that this small act of kindness would soon upend everything and steer his life in a direction no one could have imagined. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from. And subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of the subway station flickered like dying fireflies, casting shadows that danced across the grimy tile floor. It was midnight on a November Thursday, and the kind of cold that seeped through your clothes and settled in your bones had driven most people underground or into their warm beds. Jude Brooks stood near the far end of the platform, his back pressed against a concrete pillar covered in layers of peeling advertisements and graffiti tags. His hoodie was gray once, maybe 2 years ago, but now it was a patchwork of stains and small tears that he'd tried to stitch closed with whatever thread he could find. The hood was pulled up over his head, not just against the cold, but against the stares. He'd learned that looking invisible was sometimes the only way to stay safe. His right hand was buried deep in his pocket fingers, wrapped around a single $20 bill. The edges were soft from being folded and unfolded too many times. $20. That's what stood between him and a real chance at changing everything. Jude pulled his hand out just enough to glance at the bill again, like he'd done every hour for the past 3 days. The green paper looked almost sacred in the harsh station light. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., there was a bus that would take him 15 miles north to the industrial district. A warehouse there was hiring dock workers. The pay wasn't much, but it was honest work with a weekly paycheck, and that was more than he'd had in 6 months. The bus fare was $18. He'd have $2 left for a coffee and maybe a breakfast sandwich to make sure he didn't show up looking like what he was, a homeless man who hadn't eaten a real meal in 4 days. His stomach twisted, but he wasn't sure if it was from hunger or from nerves. Probably both. "Last train to Riverside in 5 minutes, a garbled voice announced over the PA system. 5 minutes. Jude looked down the empty platform. A few other people waited scattered across the space, each person existing in their own bubble of exhaustion or intoxication or both. Nobody made eye contact. That was the unspoken rule of the late-night subway. He checked the time on the station clock. 12:37 a.m. He should head back to the spot under the overpass where he'd been sleeping. It wasn't much, just a dry corner behind a dumpster, but it was better than some places he'd tried. At least nobody bothered him there. Jude was about to turn toward the exit when he heard footsteps, fast and uneven, echoing through the tunnel entrance. A woman burst onto the platform, her breath coming in short gasps. Her hair, dark blonde and soaked from the rain that must have started outside, was plastered to her face and neck. She wore jeans and a thin jacket, both dripping water onto the floor as she stumbled forward. Her hands were empty. No purse, no phone, nothing. She looked around wildly, her eyes scanning the platform with the kind of panic that Jude recognized. He'd seen that look before. Hell, he'd worn that look before. Most of the other waiting passengers didn't even glance up. One guy with headphones bobbed his head to music only he could hear. An elderly woman dozed on a bench, her shopping bags tucked between her feet. The woman's gaze landed on Jude. For a second, their eyes met, and he saw it clearly. She was terrified. She walked toward him, not slowly, not cautiously, but with the desperate speed of someone who'd already made up her mind that he was her only option. Jude's body tensed. Every instinct told him this was trouble. People didn't approach him with good news. Usually they crossed to the other side of the street or clutched their bags tighter when they saw him coming. A young white woman running up to a black man in a subway station at midnight. That never ended well for guys like him. "Please," she said, her voice cracking. She stopped about 3 feet away, close enough to talk, but far enough that she could run if she needed to. Smart. "Please, I need help." Jude's hand instinctively moved to protect the pocket with his $20. He didn't say anything, just watched her. "I know how this looks," she continued, words tumbling out fast. "I know you don't know me, and I know it's late, and I know." She sucked in a breath. "My wallet's gone. My phone's gone. I got mugged 2 blocks from here, and I just need to get home. I live in Riverside, and that's the last train." She pointed toward the tunnel where in the distance lights were beginning to appear. "I just need $20 for the fare. That's it. I swear to God I'll pay you back. I'll meet you here tomorrow, same time, whatever you need. Please." Jude studied her face. She was young, maybe late 20s, and even in her current state, you could tell she wasn't someone who spent her nights on subway platforms begging strangers for money. Her jacket, though cheap, was clean. No track marks on her arms. Her teeth were straight and white. She wasn't an addict looking for a fix. She wasn't running a con. At least she didn't look like she was. But Jude had been fooled before. 6 months ago, he'd given his last $10 to a guy who said he needed it for insulin. Watch the guy walk straight into a liquor store. That was the night Jude learned that kindness was a luxury he couldn't afford. "I don't have money," Jude said quietly, his voice rougher than he intended. "Please." Tears started rolling down her cheeks, mixing with the rainwater. "I'm not lying. I'm not trying to scam you. I need to get home. My mom's probably losing her mind right now. I told her I'd be back by 11. The train was getting closer. Jude could feel the rumble under his feet. He looked at this woman, this girl, really standing in front of him, shaking from cold and fear, and something inside his chest cracked open. She reminded him of someone, his sister Maya. Back when Maya was in college, before everything went wrong, she used to take the subway home late after her shift at the diner. Jude used to worry about her every single night until he got her text that she'd made it safely. Maya was gone now. Overdosed 3 years ago. He hadn't been there to help her. "Please," the woman whispered one more time. "I'm begging you." Jude's fingers tightened around the 20 in his pocket. This was insane. This was the stupidest thing he could possibly do. Tomorrow morning, when that bus pulled away without him on it, he'd hate himself for this moment. He'd be stuck in this city with no job, no money, no future. The warehouse wouldn't wait. They'd hire someone else, and Jude would still be sleeping under overpasses and digging through trash cans for something to eat. But when he looked at her face, really looked at it, he didn't see a scammer or a liar. He saw desperation, real honest desperation. He saw Maya. "Damn it," Jude muttered under his breath. His hand pulled the $20 bill from his pocket. It felt heavier than paper should feel, like it weighed 100 pounds. The woman's eyes went wide. "Here." He held it out between them. She stared at the money like she couldn't believe it was real. Are you sure? Take it before I change my mind." Her hand shot out and grabbed the bill. For a moment, she just held it, staring at Jude with an expression he couldn't quite read. Shock, maybe. Gratitude. Disbelief. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you so much. I swear I'll pay you back. I promise." "What's your—" The train burst out of the tunnel with a screech of brakes and a blast of hot, stale air. The doors slid open with a mechanical hiss. "Go," Jude said, nodding toward the train. "Just go." She hesitated for one more second, then turned and ran. Her wet shoes slapped against the platform as she darted through the nearest door, just as the warning chime sounded. The doors closed behind her with a pneumatic thump. Through the scratched window, Jude caught a glimpse of her face one last time. She was looking right at him, mouthing words he couldn't hear. Then the train lurched forward and pulled away into the dark tunnel, taking her and his last $20 with it. Jude stood there on the empty platform, listening to the fading rumble of the train. Slowly, he pulled his wallet from his back pocket and opened it. Inside, there was nothing but a food stamp card with $12 left on it and a faded photo of Maya from her high school graduation. He'd just given away his only way out. The reality of what he'd done hit him all at once, and his knees felt weak. Jude slumped back against the concrete pillar and slid down until he was sitting on the cold ground. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. "What the hell did you just do?" he whispered to himself. Nobody answered. The platform was empty now except for him and the sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance. Jude sat there for a long time, his wallet hanging open in his hands, staring at Maya's smiling face in the photograph. She'd been so proud that day. Their mom had been alive then, too, crying happy tears in her best church dress. "I hope she makes it home safe," he said quietly to the picture. "I hope I didn't just throw everything away for nothing." But deep down, beneath the fear and the anger at his own stupidity, there was something else, something small and warm that he hadn't felt in months. He'd helped someone. He'd seen another human being in trouble, and he'd helped them. In a world that had spent years telling Jude Brooks that he was worthless, that he was invisible, that he was just another problem to be ignored or removed, he'd proven that he was still a person, still someone who could make a choice that mattered, even if that choice destroyed him. Jude closed his wallet and pushed himself back to his feet. His legs ached from the cold. The station felt even more empty now, cavernous and echoing. He pulled his hood up tighter and started walking toward the exit, each step feeling heavier than the last. Outside, the November rain was coming down hard. Ban noi dung toi shin loi vi kong dem chin zak. De toi viet lai dung 1202 morning came cold and gray. Jude woke up under the overpass at 5:47 a.m., his clothes still damp, his body aching from concrete. He checked a discarded newspaper. 6:15 a.m. The bus left at 8:00. The interview was at 9:00, 15 miles. If he walked fast, maybe 4 hours. He'd be late, but maybe they'd understand. He knew they wouldn't. Jude stood up, folded his cardboard, and started walking north toward the industrial district. His feet hurt within the first hour. Blisters formed by the second. By 9:00 a.m., he was only halfway there, and the sun was beating down hard. He didn't stop walking. At 10:43, Jude finally reached the warehouse. His shirt was soaked with sweat. Road dust covered his face. He knew exactly how he looked. Inside the small office, a receptionist glanced up. Her expression shifted immediately to wary. "Can I help you? I'm here for the 9 a.m. interview, dock worker position. I know I'm late, transportation issues." She typed on her computer. Name, Jude Brooks. "Mr. Patterson already left. When you didn't show by 9:30, he assumed you weren't coming." "Can I still talk to him? Please, I walked 15 miles. "He's at the downtown location." She looked at him over her glasses. "Showing up almost 2 hours late isn't a great impression. Try again next month." Next month. Jude felt something cold in his stomach. "Please, I really need this job." "I'm sorry. Have a good day." Jude walked back out. The return trip took even longer. His blisters had burst. Every step was pain. He stopped twice at bus stops, watching buses he couldn't afford drive away. By 3 p.m., he was back at his building. His landlord, Marcus, stood in front of the basement door holding a black garbage bag. Jude's garbage bag. "No," Jude said, speeding up. "Marcus, please." 5 days, Brooks. I told you. "I had a job interview today. Once I get paid." "You think you're the first person to tell me that?" Marcus dropped the bag on the sidewalk. "I got 6 people waiting for this room. Please, just 1 more week." "You've been saying that for 2 weeks." Marcus went back inside and emerged with Jude's backpack. He tossed it onto the pile. "That's everything. Locks changed." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Not my problem." Marcus crossed his arms. "No money means no room. That's how it works." Jude wanted to argue, to beg, but what was the point? Fine. He picked up his backpack and garbage bag. Everything he owned fit in 2 bags. Marcus watched him. "There's a shelter on 8th. "I know where the shelters are." Marcus nodded. "Good luck." The door closed. The lock clicked. Jude stood on the sidewalk holding his bags. People walked past without looking. He was invisible again. He walked until he found a bus stop bench and sat down. An advertisement showed a smiling family. Everyone looked so happy. "You okay, brother?" An elderly man in a worn suit stood nearby holding a Bible. His face was kind. "I'm fine," Jude said. "You don't look fine." The man sat down. "Name's Pastor William. I run the community center 3 blocks that way. We're serving dinner at 6 if you're hungry." "I'm not hungry." "Son, I've been doing this 40 years. I know hungry when I see it." He paused. "Pride's important, but pride doesn't fill your stomach." Jude didn't respond. "Whatever you're going through," Pastor William continued, "you're not alone. There are people who care. You just gotta let them." "I gave away my last $20 last night," Jude said suddenly. "Some woman at the subway. She needed to get home. And now I've got nothing. Lost my interview. Lost my room. I've got nothing because I tried to help somebody." Pastor William was quiet. Then, "Or maybe you saved her life. You'll never know which." "Great. I didn't say it to make you feel better. I said it because it's true." He stood slowly. "You did a good thing. In a world that tells men like us we're worthless, you proved you're not. Don't let today make you regret it." He pulled out a card. "Dinner at 6. No questions. No judgment." Then he left. Jude sat there until sunset. When it got dark, he walked back to the overpass. He'd come full circle in 24 hours, from homeless to homeless. He lay down on his cardboard and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, he'd figure out what to do. Tonight, he just needed to disappear. The cold woke him around midnight. Jude pulled his hoodie tighter and curled into a ball, trying to preserve body heat. Around him, he could hear the sounds of the city traffic overhead sirens in the distance, someone coughing a few yards away. His stomach growled. He'd eaten nothing all day except a granola bar he'd found near a park bench that morning. The hunger was a constant ache now, something he'd learned to live with, but never quite got used to. Jude thought about Pastor Williams' card in his pocket. Dinner at 6 tomorrow. He could go. It wouldn't cost him anything except his pride, and at this point, pride seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford. But something in him resisted. Accepting charity felt like admitting defeat, like saying he couldn't take care of himself, like proving everyone who'd ever looked at him with disgust or fear was right. He pulled out his wallet and opened it in the dim light from the highway above, empty except for Maya's photo. His beautiful sister smiling in her graduation gown full of hope and dreams that had died with her 3 years ago. "What would you tell me to do?" he whispered to the picture. He could almost hear her voice. "Stop being stubborn, you idiot. Go get some food." Jude smiled despite everything. Maya had never let him wallow in self-pity. She'd kick his ass if she could see him now lying on cardboard feeling sorry for himself. A rat scurried past just a few feet away. Jude didn't even flinch anymore. He'd gotten used to sharing his space with creatures that most people considered vermin. In a way, that's what society saw him as too. Vermin. Something to be removed, swept away, hidden from view. His ribs ached from where he'd been kicked by those drunk guys 2 days ago. His feet throbbed from today's long walk. His back hurt from sleeping on concrete. Every part of his body was screaming that this couldn't continue. But what choice did he have? Tomorrow he'd figure something out. Maybe he'd go to Pastor Williams' community center. Maybe he'd try to find day labor somewhere. Maybe he'd finally break down and go to one of the shelters, even though he knew how those places were overcrowded, dangerous, with rules that treated grown men like children. For now, he just needed to make it through the night. Jude closed his eyes and tried to think of better times. His mother's cooking on Sunday afternoons. Maya's laugh when he told stupid jokes. The job he'd had 3 years ago before the company downsized and he'd been let go. Back when he had an apartment and a car and a life that made sense. How had he ended up here? What series of bad decisions and worse luck had brought him to this moment lying on cardboard under a highway overpass with nothing to his name but 2 bags of clothes and a photograph? He knew the answer. It wasn't one thing. It was 1,000 small things. Losing his job, losing his mother, losing Maya, missing rent payments, getting evicted, his car breaking down. That time he got sick and couldn't work for 2 weeks. Each disaster building on the last until there was no foundation left to stand on. And now, giving away that $20, the final straw, the thing that had pushed him from barely surviving to completely lost. But even knowing all that, Jude couldn't make himself regret it. That woman's face, the fear in her eyes, had been real. Whether she'd been telling the truth or not, she'd needed help, and he'd given it. Maybe Pastor William was right. Maybe that mattered more than anything else. Jude finally drifted off to sleep around 2 a.m., exhausted beyond measure. He dreamed of warm beds and full refrigerators and a life where $20 wasn't the difference between hope and despair. When he woke at dawn, cold and stiff and hungry, the world looked exactly the same as it had the night before. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain and exhaustion and despair, a tiny spark remained, the knowledge that he was still human, still capable of kindness, still worth something even if the world couldn't see it. That spark would have to be enough to get him through another day. 3 days passed, 3 days of walking streets with nowhere to go. 3 days of hunger that made Jude's hands shake and his vision blur. 3 days of being invisible. On the 4th morning, Jude went to the public library when it opened at 9 a.m. The library was warm, had bathrooms where he could wash his face, and if he sat quietly in the back corner, nobody bothered him. He found a table near the reference section and sat down with a random book open in front of him. Not really reading, just existing in a space where he wasn't a homeless man, just a man at a table with a book. He'd been there about 2 hours when a security guard approached. Young guy, maybe 25, with nervous eyes. "Sir, I need you to gather your things and leave." Jude looked up. "I'm just reading." "You've been sleeping. Multiple people complained." The guard's hand rested near his radio. "Library policy says I have to ask you to leave." "I wasn't sleeping. My eyes were closed, but I was thinking." "Sir, please don't make this difficult." The guard's hand moved closer to his radio. "Easy way or hard way?" Every person nearby was staring. An older woman clutched her purse. A college kid was recording on his phone. Jude felt heat rise up his neck. He wanted to argue to defend himself, but he knew how this ended. The police would come. They'd see a black man causing trouble. Suddenly, he'd be dangerous. "I'm leaving," Jude said quietly. He closed the book and walked toward the exit, feeling every eye following him. The security guard trailed behind until he was out the doors. The cold hit immediately. Jude pulled his hood up and started walking with no destination, just movement to stay warm. By midday, he was in downtown, a part he usually avoided. Too many businesses, too many cameras, too many people who'd call cops on someone sitting too long. But his feet hurt so badly, he had to stop. He found a narrow alley between two office buildings and slumped against the wall, hidden by a dumpster. He pulled out his backpack and dug through it for food. Nothing left except a crushed granola bar he'd found 2 days ago. Jude tore it open and ate the crumbled pieces, slowly trying to make it last. His stomach growled, unsatisfied. He was so focused on eating that he didn't hear them approaching. "Yo, check it out. We got a bum." Jude's head snapped up. 3 guys, early 20s, stood at the alley entrance. The smell of alcohol hit him from 15 feet away. One held a beer bottle. Another swayed, grinning. "Hey, bum," the one with the bottle called. "This is private property." Jude started to stand, calculating his exit. The alley was a dead end behind him. He'd have to go through them. "I'm leaving," he said, voice neutral. "No trouble." "Nah, man, too late." The middle guy stepped forward. College sweatshirt, expensive sneakers. "You can't just sleep wherever you want. Get a job." "Yeah," his friend laughed. "Stop being lazy." Lazy. Jude felt something hot twist in his chest, like being homeless was a choice. "I'm not looking for trouble," Jude repeated. He picked up his backpack and tried to move past them. The guy with the beer bottle stepped into his path. "So now you're ignoring us? That's disrespectful." "Move," Jude said. "Or what?" The guy's grin widened, eyes unfocused. "What are you gonna do?" Jude knew better. The best thing was back down, apologize, make himself small until they got bored. Fighting only made things worse. Then the guy kicked Jude's backpack out of his hand, sending it skidding across the dirty alley. "Oops," he said. "Butterfingers." His friends burst out laughing. Jude looked at his backpack lying in an oily puddle. Everything he owned. His notebook. His extra clothes. Maya's photo. "Pick it up," Jude said quietly. "What?" "Pick up my bag." The guy's expression changed. Drunken amusement drained away, replaced by something meaner. "Who the hell do you think you're talking to?" "I think I'm talking to some drunk kid about to make a stupid mistake." Nobody moved. Tension choked the alley. Then the guy swung the beer bottle at Jude's head. Jude ducked. The bottle smashed against brick behind him, exploding in glass and foam. Before he could straighten, a fist caught his ribs, driving air from his lungs. He stumbled. A shoe connected with his shin. "Teach this bum respect." Jude covered his head and dropped to the ground, curling tight. Another kick hit his back. Another his shoulder. He made himself small, absorbing blows without fighting back. It lasted maybe 30 seconds before someone shouted from the street, "Hey, what's going on back there?" The kicking stopped, scrambling footsteps, cursing. "Shit, let's go!" Then they were gone, laughter echoing as they disappeared. Jude lay there waiting to make sure they'd really left. His ribs screamed with every breath. His shin might be bleeding. When he finally uncurled, his hands shook. A man in a FedEx uniform peered into the alley. "You okay, buddy?" "Yeah," Jude managed. "Thanks." "You need me to call someone ambulance?" "No, I'm fine." The man looked doubtful, but nodded. "Stay safe." Then he left, probably late for a delivery. Jude crawled to his backpack and pulled it from the puddle. The outside was soaked and stained. He opened it with trembling fingers and found the plastic bag with Maya's photo. Still there, still dry. He pressed it against his chest and closed his eyes, trying to breathe through the pain. This was it. Rock bottom. 3 days without real food. No place to sleep except concrete. Getting beaten in an alley by drunk kids because he was easy prey, because the world decided he was disposable. That night, Jude found a spot under a different overpass farther from downtown where fewer people ventured after dark. Colder here, wind howling through support beams, but at least he was alone. He lay on his cardboard body, aching from the beating stomach, cramping from hunger, mind spinning with thoughts he couldn't shut off. He thought about the woman from the subway. She'd promised to pay him back. And like an idiot, he'd believed her. Where was she now? Some nice house, probably. Warm bed, full refrigerator, not a care in the world. She'd forgotten all about the homeless guy who gave her $20, probably didn't even remember his face. Jude pulled out his wallet and stared at the empty space where bills should be. The pressure built behind his eyes. He hadn't cried in years. Not when his mom died, not when Maya overdosed, not when he lost everything. Crying was weakness, and he couldn't afford weakness. But something about tonight broke through the walls. Maybe the pain, maybe the hunger, maybe just the weight of everything since giving away that $20. The first sob caught him by surprise. It came from deep in his chest, a sound he didn't recognize. Then another. Jude pressed his fist against his mouth, trying to stay quiet, but tears came anyway. They rolled down his face, hot against cold skin. His shoulders shook. His breath hitched. He cried until his throat was raw, and his eyes burned, and his chest hurt worse than his ribs. He cried for the job he'd lost, for the room he'd been kicked from, for the beating in the alley, for Maya, who'd needed him, and he hadn't been there, for his mother, who'd worked herself to death for nothing, for himself, for the man he used to be before the world ground him down. When the tears stopped, Jude felt hollow, emptied out, like he'd cried away not just sadness, but everything else, his anger, his hope, his will to keep fighting. He lay there in darkness, listening to the city above, cars rushing past, a siren, someone laughing, life going on without him. "Why did I help her?" he whispered. "Why did I think it would matter?" Morning came with frost on his cardboard. Jude woke up stiff and aching, every muscle protesting as he sat up. His ribs from yesterday's beating throbbed with each breath. Around him, the other homeless people were already packing up their things, preparing for another day of survival. Jude folded his cardboard and tucked it away, then shouldered his backpack. He needed to move. Movement meant warmth. Movement meant purpose, even if that purpose was just walking in circles. He headed toward the park, a small patch of green between buildings. It was early enough that the joggers hadn't arrived yet. Jude found a bench near a pond where ducks gathered and sat down heavily, his stomach cramped with hunger. He'd gone 4 days now with almost nothing to eat. The granola bar yesterday was long gone. He felt lightheaded, weak. How much longer could he keep this up? The ducks paddled in circles, waiting for someone to throw them bread. They seemed so simple, so content. Food, water, sunshine. That was enough for them. "You look like you could use a friend." Jude turned his head. An older woman stood a few feet away, probably late 60s, with silver hair in a bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a long coat and sensible shoes. In her hands was a paper bag. "I'm not asking for money," Jude said automatically. "Good," the woman replied, "because I wasn't offering money." She gestured to the bench. "May I sit?" Jude shrugged. She sat down with a soft sigh, placing the paper bag between them. "Beautiful morning, isn't it? Cold, but beautiful." Jude didn't respond. People usually just needed to talk at someone, and homeless people were convenient audiences. But this woman didn't seem in a hurry. She sat quietly watching the ducks with him. Then she opened the paper bag and pulled out a container, the kind from a nice restaurant. She opened it. Steam rose from roasted chicken and mashed potatoes. The smell hit Jude like a physical force. His stomach twisted so hard he had to press his hand against it. The woman held the container out. "I packed too much lunch for my husband. He's in the hospital and never eats hospital food. Would you do me a favor and take this? I'd hate to waste it." It was a lie, and they both knew it, but it was the kind of lie that let Jude take the food without losing his last scraps of pride. "Thank you," he said, quietly taking the container. A plastic fork was taped to the lid. "You're welcome, dear." Jude wanted to eat slowly to savor it, but his body had other plans. The food disappeared in what felt like seconds. The chicken was tender and seasoned with herbs. The potatoes were creamy. It was the best thing he'd tasted in months. When he looked up, the woman was still sitting there, a small smile on her face. "Better?" she asked. "Yeah." Jude's voice was rough. "Thank you. Really." "You're very welcome." She folded her hands. "My name is Martha, by the way." "Jude." "Well, Jude, it's nice to meet you." Martha paused. "You know, you remind me of my son when he was younger. Same eyes, same way of carrying yourself like the world's on your shoulders." Jude didn't know what to say. "Can I tell you something?" Martha continued. "You look like someone who's had very bad luck, but you don't look like someone who's given up. There's a difference." "Maybe I should give up," Jude said. "Might be easier." "Easier, yes. Better, no." Martha reached into her coat and pulled out a small card. There's a place called The Haven. It's a community kitchen about 6 blocks from here. They serve dinner every evening, but they also need volunteers. Strong young men like you could be real help. I don't need charity. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering an opportunity. Martha placed the card on the bench. The director's name is Ben. Tell him Martha sent you. If you're willing to work, he'll find something for you. And if you work hard enough, he might even pay you a little. Jude picked up the card, turning it over. The address was printed on one side with a simple logo of a dove. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Martha smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Because someone helped me once when I needed it, and because you look like someone who deserves a chance." She stood up slowly. "Take care of yourself, Jude. And if you go to the Haven, tell Ben I said you have good eyes. He'll know what that means." Then she walked away, leaving Jude alone with an empty container and a business card that felt impossibly heavy. He sat there for a long time staring at the card. Part of him wanted to throw it away. Places like that always had strings attached. They'd want him to sit through sermons or fill out forms or prove he was worthy. But another part of him, the part tired of sleeping on cardboard and getting beaten in alleys, thought maybe it was worth a shot. What did he have to lose? That evening, just as the sun was setting, Jude found himself standing in front of the Haven. It was a 2-story brick building between a laundromat and a bodega with a faded sign and warm light spilling from windows. He could hear voices inside, laughter dishes clattering. He almost turned around 3 times before pushing the door open. Inside was warmer than expected and busier. Long tables filled the main room with people eating dinner. Some looked homeless like him, but others looked like regular working folks who just needed a free meal. Nobody seemed ashamed. A tall black man with graying hair and broad shoulders walked between tables, stopping to chat with people. He had the kind of presence that said he was in charge without announcing it. Jude approached cautiously. "Are you Ben?" The man turned. "I am." "And you are?" "Jude Brooks. Martha sent me." Ben's expression changed immediately, warmth entering his eyes. "Martha, huh? That woman's got a gift for finding people who need us." He extended his hand. "Welcome to the Haven, Jude. You hungry?" "I ate earlier. She gave me food." Jude hesitated. "She said you might have work." "Might." Ben studied him. "What kind of work you done before?" "Construction mostly. Loading dock, warehouse. Whatever paid." "You strong?" "Strong enough." Ben nodded. "Come with me." He led Jude through the dining area to a back room serving as kitchen and storage. Boxes of canned goods stacked against one wall, bags of rice and flour against another. Organized chaos. "We get food delivery every Tuesday and Friday," Ben explained. "Takes 3 people about 2 hours to unload and organize. One of my regular guys hurt his back. You think you could help tomorrow morning?" "Yeah. What time?" 8 a.m. sharp." "I'll be here." Ben looked at him carefully. "You got a place to sleep tonight?" Jude's jaw tightened. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." There was no judgment in Ben's voice, just matter-of-fact concern. Something about that made it harder to lie. "I've been staying under the overpass on 6th, Jude admitted. Ben nodded slowly. "Here's what I can do. Back there," he pointed to a door at the far end, "is our dry storage room. It's not fancy, but it's warm and locks from inside. I can't pay you until you've worked a few days, but you can sleep there in exchange for helping tomorrow. Deal?" Jude stared at him. "You're letting me sleep here. You don't even know me." "Martha sent you. That's enough." Ben extended his hand again. "We've all needed help sometime, Jude. No shame in accepting it when it's offered." Jude shook his hand, throat suddenly tight. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. That delivery's heavy. You might curse my name by noon." Ben grinned. "But for tonight, make yourself comfortable. Bathroom's down the hall. We lock main doors at 10, but I'll give you a key for the back entrance." That night, Jude lay on an old exercise mat in the storage room, surrounded by boxes of pasta and canned vegetables. A small window near the ceiling showed dark sky outside. It wasn't much. The mat was thin. He could feel hard floor underneath. The room smelled like cardboard and dried herbs, but it was warm and safe. And for the first time in weeks, Jude felt like maybe he was worth saving after all. He pulled out his wallet and looked at Maya's picture. "I met some good people today," he whispered. "I think things might get better." Her smile seemed to say she'd known it all along. Jude closed his eyes and, for the first time since losing his room, slept through the night without waking once. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of work and routine. Jude showed up at the Haven every morning at 7:30, half an hour before he had to, because being early was the only way he knew to prove he wasn't going to disappear. He unloaded deliveries, mopped floors, organized shelves, fixed a broken door, patched a leaky pipe, and did whatever else Ben needed done. Ben paid him $50 a week in cash. Not much, but more than Jude had seen in months. More importantly, Ben let him keep sleeping in the storage room. It became Jude's home. He bought a real pillow and a blanket from the thrift store down the street. He kept his corner neat and organized. He started to feel human again. The people who came to the Haven for meals started recognizing him, nodding hello or asking how he was doing. Some of them shared their stories during the long volunteer shifts. Others just appreciated having someone who listened without judgment. Jude learned that Ben had started the Haven 15 years ago after his own brother died on the streets from pneumonia. He learned that the older woman who helped serve dinner, Miss Rosa, had been homeless herself once. He learned that people ended up in desperate places for 1,000 different reasons, and most of those reasons weren't their fault. He also learned that there were good people in the world. People like Martha, who'd come back twice more to bring food and ask how he was doing. People like Ben, who saw potential instead of problems. People who gave a damn. On a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after Martha first found him in the park, Jude was in the main room, setting up tables for dinner service. It was quiet. The rush wouldn't start for another hour. He was focused on making sure the tables were perfectly aligned when he heard the door open behind him. "Sorry, we're not serving yet," he called over his shoulder. "Dinner starts at 5. "I'm not here for dinner." Something about the voice made Jude turn around. A woman stood in the doorway, and for a moment he couldn't process what he was seeing. She wore a tailored navy blue suit that probably cost more than he used to make in a month. Her hair was styled in soft waves. Diamond studs glinted in her ears. She looked like she'd walked out of a magazine spread about successful businesswomen, but her face, he knew that face. "Oh my God," Jude breathed. Lauren Hart stood perfectly still, her hands clasped in front of her, her expression somewhere between nervous and hopeful. "Hi, Jude." His mind was racing, trying to reconcile the panicked, soaking wet girl from the subway station with the polished executive standing in front of him. "What? How did you—" "I've been looking for you for 3 weeks," Lauren said quietly. She took a tentative step forward. "I went back to that subway station every night for a week, hoping you'd be there. I asked around, put up flyers in the neighborhood. Finally, someone told me they'd seen you here." Jude just stared at her. Lauren's composure cracked slightly. "I know this must be confusing. Can we talk, please?" Jude called toward the kitchen. When Ben emerged, Jude said, "I need to step outside for a minute. Is that okay?" Ben glanced at Lauren, then back at Jude, his expression curious, but not prying. "Take your time." Outside, the November afternoon was cold, but sunny. Jude led Lauren to the small bench beside the building's entrance, the same bench where people waited on cold nights for the doors to open. They sat down, and for a moment neither spoke. "You look good," Lauren said finally. "Better than—" She stopped herself. "I'm glad you're okay." "Who are you?" Jude asked, not angrily, just genuinely confused. "I mean really, because you're clearly not some random person who got mugged." Lauren took a breath. "My name is Lauren Hart. I'm the CEO of Hart Technologies. We develop AI systems for social impact analysis." She pulled out her phone and showed him a web page with her photo, the same polished professional version sitting next to him now. "That night at the subway station, I was conducting a field test for a project we're developing." "A field test," Jude repeated slowly. "We're building an AI that analyzes trust patterns in urban environments. I wanted to experience firsthand what it's like when people have to decide whether to trust a stranger in crisis." Lauren's hands twisted together in her lap. "I had a whole team monitoring me remotely. I was supposed to be completely safe, but my phone died earlier than expected, and I lost contact with them. When those guys actually did try to mug me 2 blocks from the station, I panicked. It became real." Jude felt something cold settle in his stomach. "So you were running some kind of experiment, and I was part of it?" "No." Lauren turned to face him fully. "You weren't supposed to be part of anything. The experiment was supposed to be me observing how people reacted to someone asking for help, but when my phone died and I actually needed help, you were the only person who gave it to me." Her voice dropped. "Out of everyone I approached that night, and I asked at least 30 people before I got to you, you were the only one who said yes. The only one." "I was also the only one who couldn't afford to say yes," Jude said quietly. "I know. Lauren's eyes were bright with emotion. "When I realized what you'd done, what you'd sacrificed, Jude, I've been trying to find you ever since. I need you to know that what you did mattered. It changed everything for me." "How?" "Because my entire company is built on algorithms and data analysis. We measure human behavior in numbers and patterns. But that night, you showed me something that can't be measured or predicted." Lauren pulled an envelope from her jacket pocket. "You showed me genuine goodness, and I've spent 3 weeks trying to figure out how to thank you for that." She held out the envelope. Jude didn't take it. "I don't want charity," he said. "It's not charity. It's a job offer." When Jude still didn't move, Lauren opened the envelope herself and pulled out 2 items. The first was a check for $20. "This is symbolic," she said, placing it on the bench between them. "Your investment back with interest to come." The second was a formal letter on Heart Technologies' letterhead. "This is a real offer. Community Outreach Director for the Heart Foundation. That's our nonprofit arm. Salary of $65,000 a year to start full benefits, and your job would be to design and implement programs that actually help people in situations like yours. Not corporate charity that makes rich people feel good, but real practical support that makes a difference." Jude picked up the letter with shaking hands. The words blurred as he tried to read them. $65,000. He'd never made more than $30,000 in his best year. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you understand what it's like in ways that no one else in my organization can. Because you made a choice that proves you have the exact kind of character we need. Because Martha, who's my mother, by the way, told me you have good eyes." Lauren smiled slightly. "She's rarely wrong about people. Martha is your mother." "She is. And she's been insufferably smug about finding you first." Lauren's smile faded into something more serious. "Jude, I can't undo what happened to you after you helped me. I can't give you back those 3 weeks, but I can offer you a chance to take your experience and use it to help other people. You'd be working with me directly, making real decisions about real programs. Your voice would matter." Jude stared at the letter, then at the $20 check, then at Lauren's earnest face. Part of him wanted to be angry. Angry that she'd been conducting some experiment while he was living hand to mouth. Angry that she came from a world so different from his that she could play at being desperate while he actually was. But he couldn't make himself feel that anger, because the truth was, she'd been genuinely scared that night. The truth was, she'd spent weeks looking for him to make things right. The truth was, this offer wasn't pity, it was respect. "I don't have a college degree," he said finally. "I don't care. You have something more valuable: lived experience and genuine compassion. I've been homeless for 6 months. Which makes you more qualified for this position than anyone with a master's degree in social work. I might not be good at it. Then we'll train you, but I think you'll be amazing at it." Lauren extended her hand. "What do you say, Jude? Will you let me help you the way you helped me?" Jude looked at her outstretched hand. 3 weeks ago, he'd been at rock bottom, beaten and broken, and convinced the world had given up on him. Now he was holding a job offer that could change his entire life, all because he'd given $20 to a stranger. He thought about Maya, about what she would tell him to do. He could hear her voice in his head, clear as day. "Take the damn job, you idiot, and then help as many people as you can." Jude took Lauren's hand and shook it firmly. "When do I start?" Lauren's face broke into a brilliant smile. "How about Monday? That gives you time to process everything and maybe buy some professional clothes." She reached back into her jacket and pulled out a business card. "This has my direct number. Call me this week and we'll work out all the details." They stood up from the bench. Lauren looked like she wanted to say something else, but instead, she just smiled again. "Thank you, Jude, for helping me that night and for saying yes today." "Thank you," Jude replied, "for coming back, for looking for me, for—" his voice cracked slightly, "for not forgetting." "I could never forget." Lauren squeezed his hand once more, then turned toward the sleek black car Jude now noticed parked at the curb. As she walked away, she called back over her shoulder, "See you Monday, Community Outreach Director Brooks." Jude stood there on the sidewalk holding a job offer letter and a $20 check, watching her drive away. Then he looked down at the papers in his hands and started laughing. Not bitter laughter, but genuine disbelieving joy. Ben emerged from the Haven's door. "Everything okay out here?" "Yeah," Jude said, still laughing. "Yeah, Ben, everything's more than okay." He showed Ben the letter. "I got a job. A real job. Ben read the letter, his eyebrows climbing higher with each line. Holy hell, Jude, this is incredible. It is, isn't it? Jude folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his pocket like it was made of glass. I should probably start learning how to wear a tie. Probably, Ben agreed, grinning. But don't forget about us down here when you're up in those fancy offices. Never, Jude promised. This place saved my life. I'm not forgetting that. That night, in his corner of the storage room, Jude pulled out Maya's picture. I did it, he told her. I don't know how, but I did it. Things are going to be different now. For the first time since she died, he felt like maybe she'd be proud of him. He fell asleep with the job offer letter under his pillow and a smile on his face, dreaming of possibilities he'd thought were lost forever. Monday morning arrived wrapped in winter sunshine. Jude stood in front of the mirror in the Havens bathroom, adjusting his tie for the 5th time. Ben had taken him to a discount clothing store over the weekend, helping him pick out 2 suits, 3 dress shirts, and a pair of leather shoes that didn't hurt his feet. The man looking back at him in the mirror was almost unrecognizable, professional, put together, like someone who belonged in a place with glass doors and elevator music. But underneath the suit, he was still Jude Brooks. Still the guy who'd slept on cardboard 3 weeks ago. He had to remember that, had to hold on to it, because that's what made him qualified for this job. You clean up nice, Ben said from the doorway. He was holding a travel mug of coffee. Here, first day fuel? Jude took the coffee gratefully. I'm nervous. Good. Means you care. Ben clapped him on the shoulder. You're gonna do great. And when you inevitably feel like you don't belong in that building, remember they asked you to be there. They want what you have to offer. Jude nodded, trying to absorb that truth. The Hart Technologies building was downtown, a glass and steel tower that reflected the sky like a mirror. Jude stood outside for a full minute just staring up at it before forcing himself to walk through the revolving doors. The lobby was all marble and chrome with a security desk and turnstiles that required a badge to pass through. A young receptionist with a headset smiled at him. Can I help you? I'm Jude Brooks. I'm supposed to start today in the Hart Foundation. Her expression brightened. Oh, Miss Hart said you'd be coming. She's expecting you. Let me get you a temporary badge. She printed out a visitor pass and called someone on her phone. Marcus will be right down to escort you up. A minute later, a friendly guy in his 30s appeared and led Jude to the elevators. You're the new community outreach director, right? Everyone's excited to meet you. Lauren, Miss Hart has been talking about you all week. They rode to the 15th floor, and when the doors opened, Jude stepped into a completely different world. The Hart Foundation offices were open and bright with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. People worked at standing desks or clustered in small meeting areas. Everything looked expensive but purposeful, like money spent on function rather than showing off. Lauren emerged from a glass-walled office, and Jude's breath caught. She wore a charcoal suit with her hair pulled back every inch the CEO he'd seen online. But when she saw him, her professional mask dropped into a genuine smile. Jude, you made it. She crossed the space to shake his hand. How are you feeling? Terrified, he admitted. Perfect. Come on, let me show you around. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind. Lauren introduced him to what felt like 50 people whose names he immediately forgot. She showed him his office, an actual office with a door and a window and a desk that wasn't made of cardboard. She explained the foundation's current programs: food distribution job, training, housing assistance, addiction recovery support. These are good programs, Lauren said as they reviewed documents in her office, but they're not enough. They're reactive instead of proactive. That's where you come in. She pulled up a presentation on her laptop. I want you to design something new, something based on what you've lived through. What would have helped you most when you were at your lowest? Jude thought about it, remembering those terrible weeks. Transportation, he said finally. I lost that job interview because I couldn't afford bus fare. If I'd had a way to get there, everything might have been different. Transportation, Lauren repeated, typing notes. What else? Basic dignity services, a place to shower and shave before a job interview, clean clothes. Most shelters only let you shower at weird hours, and there's usually a line. If you have a morning interview, you're screwed. He was warming to the topic now, ideas flowing. And laundry. You can't show up to an interview in clothes that smell like the street. But laundromats cost money most homeless people don't have. Lauren was typing fast, her eyes bright. This is exactly what I needed. Keep going. By the end of the day, they had the skeleton of a program Jude was calling Wheels of Hope, a fleet of mobile service vehicles that would provide showers, laundry haircuts, and job interview prep at various locations throughout the city. Each vehicle would also stock basic necessities and have tablets where people could apply for jobs and housing. "This is brilliant," Lauren said, looking at their notes. "How soon can we launch a pilot?" "I have no idea. I've never launched anything before." "Then we'll figure it out together." Lauren closed her laptop. "Jude, I want you to know something. I didn't hire you to be a figurehead or to make our foundation look good. I hired you because I believe you can change lives. Your voice matters here. Your ideas matter. Don't ever hesitate to tell me when something isn't working or when you see a better way." "Thank you," Jude said. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't." Over the next 3 months, Jude threw himself into the work with an intensity that surprised even him. He spent mornings in the office developing programs and meeting with the foundation team. Afternoons, he was on the streets talking to the people the programs were meant to serve. He wanted to understand not just what they needed, but who they were. He met Marcus, who'd been a carpenter before a workplace injury left him unable to work. He met Sheila, a single mother who'd lost her apartment when her hours got cut. He met Tommy, a veteran with PTSD who couldn't hold down a regular job. Each person had a story, and each story made Jude more determined to build something that actually helped. The Wheels of Hope pilot launched in March. The first day, Jude stood next to their newly wrapped van painted bright blue with the Heart Foundation logo and Dignity on Wheels written on the side, and watched as the first person approached. It was Marcus, the carpenter. He looked at Jude with disbelief. "This is real free showers and clothes." "Free," Jude confirmed. "And if you need help finding work, we've got people inside who can help with that too." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "Man, I've got a job interview Thursday. I've been so worried about how I'd—" His voice broke. "Thursday, you'll walk in there looking and feeling like the skilled professional you are," Jude said firmly. "Come on, let me show you what we've got." By the end of the first week, they'd served over 100 people. By the end of the first month, Lauren was already approving funds for 2 more vehicles. Jude started staying late at the office not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He'd be reviewing program feedback or planning outreach events, and he'd look up to find Lauren still at her desk too, working on her own projects. One evening, around 8 p.m., she knocked on his office door. "You hungry? I'm ordering food." "Starving," Jude admitted. They ended up in the foundation's small break room sharing Thai food and talking about everything except work. Lauren told him about growing up with Martha, about losing her father when she was young, about the pressure of running a company at 32. Jude told her about Maya, really told her for the first time since his sister died. "She was brilliant," he said softly. "She was going to be a teacher, but she got injured her junior year, got prescribed painkillers, and—" He shook his head. "By the time I realized how bad it was, she was already too far gone." "I'm sorry," Lauren said quietly. "Me too. Every day." Jude looked down at his food. "That's part of why this work matters so much. Every person we help is someone's Maya, someone's sister or brother or parent or child. They're not statistics. They're people." Lauren reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. "You're making a real difference, Jude. I hope you know that." Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them. It wasn't just respect or friendship anymore. It was something deeper, something neither of them had planned on, but both of them could feel. "I should probably head home," Lauren said after a moment, but she didn't move. "Yeah," Jude agreed. "Me too." Neither of them stood up. It became a pattern. Late nights at the office dinners shared conversations that stretched for hours. The foundation team started making knowing comments about how much time the boss spent with the new director. Martha, when she visited for lunch one day, just smiled and winked at Jude like she'd planned this all along. Maybe she had. In May, the city council invited Jude to present about Wheels of Hope at their monthly meeting. He was terrified. Public speaking had never been his thing. But Lauren helped him prepare, running through his presentation a dozen times until he had it perfect. The night of the presentation, Jude stood at the podium looking out at the council members and the crowd gathered to observe. His hands shook as he pulled up his first slide. 6 months ago, he began, I was homeless. I'd lost my job, my apartment, and my hope. I slept under overpasses and got kicked out of libraries for looking suspicious. The world had decided I was invisible, and I'd almost started believing it. He clicked to the next slide showing the Wheels of Hope van. But then someone gave me a chance. and that chance led to a program that's already served over 1,500 people. People who aren't invisible, people who deserve dignity and opportunity. By the time he finished, the room was completely silent. Then someone started clapping, then someone else. Then the whole room was on its feet applauding. Jude looked over at Lauren, who was sitting in the front row with tears streaming down her face and the biggest smile he'd ever seen. That night after the presentation, they went to a quiet bar near the office. Lauren ordered champagne. "To you," she toasted. "You were incredible tonight." "To us," Jude corrected. "None of this happens without you." They clinked glasses and drank, and when Jude set his glass down, he found Lauren looking at him with an expression that made his heart race. "What?" he asked. "I'm just thinking about that night at the subway station," she said softly. "About how you gave me $20 when you had every reason not to. About how you could have been bitter or angry when I found you, but instead you said yes to this crazy opportunity. About how," she paused, "about how lucky I am that you exist in the world." "Lauren, I know this is complicated," she continued quickly. "You work for my foundation, and there are rules about that. But I need you to know that these last few months have been some of the best of my life, not just professionally, but personally. Being around you makes me want to be better." Jude's throat felt tight. "You make me believe I can be more than my past." "You already are more than your past." They sat there in the dim bar, the air between them charged with everything they wanted to say but hadn't yet. Jude knew he was falling for her, knew it was risky and complicated and could end badly, but for the first time in years, he wanted to take that risk. "Can I take you to dinner this weekend?" he asked. "A real dinner, not takeout at the office." Lauren smiled. "I'd like that." When Jude got home that night, home being a small studio apartment the foundation had helped him secure, he pulled out his wallet and looked at Maya's picture. "I think I'm happy," he told her. "I know that's weird to say out loud, but I am. I wake up every morning with a purpose. I'm helping people, and I think I might be falling in love with an amazing woman who sees me for who I really am." Maya's smile seemed to say she'd known this was coming all along. Jude carefully put the photo back in his wallet, but this time he tucked the $20 check Lauren had given him right next to it. A reminder that the best investment he'd ever made was believing in kindness when he had nothing left to give. Summer came to the city with heat that shimmered off the pavement and turned the Hart Technologies building into a glass greenhouse. Jude had been with the foundation for 6 months now, and Wheels of Hope had expanded to 5 vehicles covering different parts of the city. The program had helped over 3,000 people find jobs, housing, or at least some temporary stability. But more than that, Jude had found his voice. He'd become an advocate, speaking at community meetings and corporate events, telling his story to audiences who needed to hear it. The local news had done a feature on him. A national magazine was planning a profile. He wasn't famous exactly, but he was known, respected, and he was in love. He and Lauren had been dating officially for 3 months, keeping it quiet at first, out of respect for workplace dynamics. But as their relationship deepened, they'd stopped hiding it. They'd go to dinner after work, spend weekends exploring the city together, and stay up late talking about everything from philosophy to their favorite childhood memories. Martha had them over for Sunday dinners, watching them with undisguised delight. "I knew," she'd say every time. "I knew from the moment I saw you sitting in that park." Everything was perfect, almost too perfect. Which is why Jude wasn't entirely surprised when Lauren asked him to meet her on the rooftop terrace after work on a Tuesday in late July. He found her standing at the railing, looking out over the city. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the wind lifted strands of her hair. "Hey," he said softly, joining her at the railing. "Hey." Lauren didn't look at him, just kept staring at the skyline. Something in her posture made Jude's stomach tighten. "What's wrong?" She took a breath. Hart Technologies is opening a new international headquarters in London. It's been in the works for 2 years, but the board just approved the final plans. They want someone senior to oversee the launch and run the European operations. "That's great," Jude said, though he already sensed where this was going. "Who are they sending?" "Me." Lauren finally turned to face him. "They're offering me managing director of European operations. It's a massive opportunity, triple the budget, twice the staff, and we'd be working with governments across the continent on AI policy." Jude felt like the roof had dropped out from under him. London, she confirmed. "For at least 3 years, probably longer." They stood there in silence, the magnitude of it settling between them. "When do you leave?" Jude asked finally. "The position starts in September, but I need to give them an answer by next week." Lauren reached out and took his hand. "I want you to come with me." Jude's head snapped up. "What?" "Come to London. Be our global community director. We'd be establishing foundation operations across Europe. You'd be designing programs for multiple countries, working with international organizations. It would be incredible, Jude, and we'd be together." It was everything. The opportunity of a lifetime. A chance to help people on a scale he'd never imagined. And he'd get to stay with Lauren to keep building this relationship that had become the best part of his life. But, "Can I think about it?" he asked. Something flickered across Lauren's face, disappointment maybe, or fear. "Of course. Take all the time you need." That night, Jude couldn't sleep. He lay in his apartment staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning through possibilities and consequences. London would be amazing. He'd never been out of the country. Hell, before this year, he'd never been out of the state. He could help thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands. He could be with Lauren, wake up next to her every morning, build a life together in a new city where nobody knew his past. But the next day, instead of going to the office, Jude went back to the Haven. Ben was in the kitchen, as always, directing the organized chaos of meal preparation. "Jude?" Ben's face lit up. "Wasn't expecting you today. Everything okay? Can we talk?" They went outside to that same bench where Jude had first sat with Martha. It felt like a different lifetime. "Lauren's moving to London," Jude said. "She wants me to go with her." "And you don't want to?" "I don't know. Part of me does. Part of me thinks I'd be crazy not to." Jude leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "But when I think about leaving, I think about Marcus and Sheila and Tommy. I think about all the people who are still out there sleeping under that overpass on 6th Street. I know this city, Ben. I know where people hide, where they gather what they need. In London, I'd be starting from zero." "You'd figure it out," Ben said. "You're good at what you do." "Maybe. But would I be helping the people who really need it, or would I just be designing programs from some office tower, never getting my hands dirty?" Jude shook his head. "The work here isn't done. The work here is never done. And I'm the guy who can do it because I've been there. I've slept on cardboard. I've been invisible. I can reach people that nobody else can reach." Ben was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Sounds like you've already decided." "I think I have." Jude's voice was heavy. "I just don't know how to tell her." "Tell her the truth. She'll understand." "What if she doesn't?" "Then that's your answer about whether this relationship is meant to last." Ben put a hand on Jude's shoulder. "But I know Lauren. She's not going to ask you to be someone you're not." That evening, Jude met Lauren at her apartment. She'd cooked dinner, or rather she'd ordered dinner and arranged it nicely on plates, since neither of them were great cooks. They ate mostly in silence, both knowing a conversation was coming. Finally, over coffee, Lauren said, "You're not coming to London, are you?" Jude set down his cup. "I can't. I want to, Lauren. God, you have no idea how much I want to. But this city, these people, they're why I'm here. They're why I survived, and there are still so many who need help. London has homeless people too," Lauren pointed out, but her tone was gentle, not argumentative. "I know, but they have programs and systems already in place. Here we're building something new, something that's actually working because it's designed by people who lived it." Jude reached across the table and took her hand. "What we've built together, the foundation wheels of hope, that's my home now. I can't leave it. Not yet. Maybe not ever." Lauren's eyes were shining with tears, but she nodded. "I understand. Do you?" "Yes." She squeezed his hand. "You're not running away from me. You're running toward something important. That's who you are. It's one of the reasons I love you." Jude's breath caught. It was the first time either of them had said it out loud. "I love you too," he said. "That's why this is so hard." "I know." Lauren wiped her eyes. "So what do we do?" "I don't know. Try long distance. That seems insane. 3 years is a long time." "It is." They sat there holding hands across the table, both of them crying now, both of them knowing what they had was real, but understanding that sometimes real love meant letting go. "We could make it work," Lauren said finally. "Video calls. I could visit every few months. You could come there." "Lauren," Jude's voice was gentle but firm. "You're about to run European operations for a major tech company. You're going to be traveling constantly, working insane hours, making decisions that affect millions of people. You need to be present for that. You can't be distracted by whether I'm upset that you missed a video call." You wouldn't be a distraction. I would, and you'd feel guilty about it, which would make you miserable, which would make us both miserable. Jude stood up and walked around the table, kneeling beside her chair. You're going to go to London and do amazing things. You're going to change policy and help people and be brilliant. And I'm going to stay here and keep building programs and helping this community heal. And maybe, his voice cracked, maybe if we're really lucky, our paths will cross again someday. That's not a plan, Lauren whispered. That's hope. Hope's all I've got, Jude said. Hope's what got me through sleeping under bridges. Hope's what made me give you that $20. Hope's what I'm choosing now. Lauren pulled him up and kissed him hard and desperate and heartbroken. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying openly. I'm going to miss you so much, she said. I'm going to miss you every single day. They spent the rest of the night together talking and crying and holding each other, trying to memorize every moment because they didn't know when they'd have another chance. 2 weeks later, Jude stood at the airport terminal watching Lauren walk toward security. She'd already said goodbye to Martha, who'd cried, and made them both promise to stay in touch. Now, it was just the two of them and 1,000 things left unsaid. Call me when you land, Jude said. I will. Lauren straightened his collar, a gesture that was already familiar and would soon become a memory. Take care of yourself. Don't work too hard. Eat actual meals, not just coffee. Take care of yourself, too. Don't let them work you to death. Make time to see the city, not just boardrooms. I'll try. They stood there, neither wanting to be the first to let go. This isn't goodbye forever, Lauren said. It's just goodbye for now. Goodbye for now, Jude echoed. One more kiss. One more embrace. Then Lauren picked up her carry-on bag and walked toward security. She turned back once, waving, and Jude waved back, smiling, even though his heart was breaking. He watched until she disappeared from view, swallowed by the crowd of travelers. Then he turned and walked back to the parking garage, got in his car, and drove to the foundation office. Because the work didn't stop. It couldn't stop. There were people out there who needed help, and Jude Brooks was going to make sure they got it, even if it cost him everything. That night alone in his apartment, Jude pulled out his wallet and looked at the $20 check that had started everything. Next to it was a new photo, him and Lauren at the Wheels of Hope launch, both of them smiling like they'd won the lottery. Worth it, he told Maya's picture. It's all been worth it. He wasn't sure if he believed that yet, but he knew he would eventually. Hope was all he had, and sometimes that was enough. 2 years passed like a river, sometimes rushing, sometimes slow, but always moving forward. Jude threw himself into the work with an intensity that worried Ben and Martha both. Wheels of Hope expanded to 12 vehicles. The foundation launched a job training center. They opened a transitional housing facility. Jude was promoted to Director of Operations, overseeing everything. He spoke at conferences, testified before Congress about homelessness policy, won awards he never thought he'd receive. Every success made him think of Lauren, wondering if she'd heard about it, wondering if she was proud of him. They'd tried to stay in touch at first, video calls that grew increasingly awkward as their lives diverged, text messages that became less frequent. The distance wasn't just geographic, it was the natural drift of two people building separate lives in separate worlds. The last time they'd talked had been her birthday 6 months ago. The conversation had been warm, but brief. She was launching a new initiative across Scandinavia. He was developing a program for rural communities. They were both busy, both happy, both moving forward, both alone. Jude dated occasionally, a teacher he met at a community event, a lawyer who volunteered at the Haven. Good people, interesting people, but none of them were Lauren. Eventually, he stopped trying. He had his work, and that was enough. Or so he told himself. Martha invited him to Sunday dinner every week without fail. She never mentioned Lauren unless he asked, but he could see the sadness in her eyes. She'd known what they had. She'd hoped it would last. You should find someone, she told him one Sunday in October. You're too young to be married to your work. I'm happy. Jude insisted. You're driven. That's not the same thing. But he didn't know how to explain that. Every time he tried to imagine a future with someone, he saw Lauren's face. Every time he achieved something, his first instinct was to call her. She was the ghost in every room, the memory that colored everything. In November, 2 years after she'd left the foundation board, approved Jude's biggest project yet, a citywide gala. to celebrate the program's expansion and raise funds for the next phase. It would be held outdoors in the Civic Center Plaza with food trucks and live music and speeches from community leaders. Jude hated the idea of being the center of attention, but the board insisted he speak. So he prepared remarks, practiced them with Ben, and tried not to think about how much he wished Lauren could be there to see what they'd built. The night of the gala arrived with perfect autumn weather, cool but not cold, with a sunset that painted the sky in brilliant colors. Over 1,000 people came. Community members, city officials, donors, volunteers, and the people the programs had helped. Jude saw Marcus now working full-time as a carpenter and volunteering with Wheels of Hope on weekends. He saw Sheila, who'd gotten her nursing degree and just started a new job. He saw Tommy sober 2 years and running his own small business. These were the success stories, the reasons he'd stayed. As the event kicked off, Jude stood backstage of the temporary platform they'd erected, listening to the mayor give opening remarks. Ben appeared beside him. "You ready for this?" Ben asked. "No," Jude admitted, "but I'll do it anyway." "That's the spirit." Ben squeezed his shoulder. "You've come a long way from sleeping in my storage room." "That storage room saved my life." "No," Ben corrected gently. "You saved your life. The storage room just gave you a safe place to do it." The mayor finished speaking and introduced Jude. The crowd applauded as he walked to the microphone. Standing there, looking out at all those faces, Jude felt the weight of everything that had brought him to this moment. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began. 2.5 years ago, I was where many of you have been. Homeless, hungry, invisible. I'd given up on myself because the world had given up on me first. He told them about the night in the subway station, about giving away his last $20. He told them about rock bottom and the haven and the people who'd helped him climb back up. He told them about building programs that treated people with dignity instead of pity. "Every person we've helped represents a choice," Jude said. "A choice to believe that everyone deserves a second chance. A choice to invest in people even when it seems crazy. A choice to..." Movement at the back of the crowd caught his eye. Someone was making their way through the packed plaza, moving with purpose. The stage lights made it hard to see clearly, but something about the figure made Jude's words falter. The crowd turned to look. People started whispering. And then she stepped into the light. Lauren Hart, wearing a midnight blue dress that shimmered like water, her hair longer than he remembered, her eyes locked on his with an intensity that stopped his heart. Jude's prepared speech evaporated from his mind. Lauren climbed the stairs to the stage. The crowd was dead silent now, everyone sensing that something important was happening. She walked right up to him and took the microphone from his nerveless fingers. "Sorry for interrupting," she said to the crowd, her voice amplified across the plaza. "But I've been away for 2 years, and I have some things I need to say." Jude could only stare at her. Lauren turned to face him directly. 2.5 years ago, I was conducting an experiment about trust and human behavior. I thought I could measure kindness, like data, reduce it to algorithms and patterns. Then I met a man who proved that some things can't be measured. She reached into her purse and pulled out something small. Even from a few feet away, Jude could see what it was, a $20 bill encased in a clear frame. "This is the $20 you gave me that night," Lauren continued. "The money you couldn't afford to give. The money that cost you everything and changed my life." She held it up for the crowd to see. "I've carried this with me for 2 years, to London, to Oslo, to Berlin, to every boardroom and every meeting as a reminder of what real investment looks like." She turned back to Jude. "You invested in me when I was a stranger. You believed in me when you had no reason to. And then you let me go because you knew I needed to chase my dreams." "Lauren, what are you..." "I'm saying that I spent 2 years trying to build something meaningful over there. And I did. We helped a lot of people. But every success felt incomplete because you weren't there to share it." Her voice wavered. "I'm saying that I came back because this is where I belong, because you're where I belong." The crowd collectively held its breath. Lauren reached into her purse again and pulled out a small velvet box. The crowd gasped. "Jude Brooks," she said, and her voice was shaking now. "You bet your last $20 on me. Now I want to bet my entire life on you. Will you marry me?" She opened the box, revealing a simple gold band that caught the stage lights. Jude couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The entire plaza was staring at him, waiting for an answer, but all he could see was Lauren. Lauren who'd come back. Lauren who was here, who was real, who was holding a ring and asking him to marry her. "You're supposed to say something," she whispered, and he could see tears starting to slide down her cheeks. Yes, Jude managed. Then louder, yes. Yes, of course, yes. The crowd erupted. Lauren slipped the ring onto his finger, and then they were kissing, holding each other like they might never let go again, and Jude felt something in his chest that he hadn't felt in 2 years complete. When they finally broke apart, Lauren took the microphone again. By the way, I'm not just back for a visit. As of this morning, I'm officially the permanent director of Heart Technologies' North American operations, which means I'm staying. She looked at Jude. If that's okay with you. That's more than okay, Jude said. The rest of the night passed in a blur of congratulations and hugs and laughter. Martha appeared at some point crying happy tears and saying, I knew it, to anyone who would listen. Ben shook Jude's hand so hard his arm hurt. Tommy started a chant of "Kiss her again" that the whole crowd took up. Later, when the event was winding down and most of the crowd had dispersed, Jude and Lauren stood together at the edge of the plaza, watching the cleanup crew pack up. I can't believe you're really here, Jude said. I can't believe you said yes to me proposing, Lauren replied. That was terrifying. What if you'd said no? I would never say no to you. Even though I left, you left to do important work, and you came back. Jude pulled her closer. That's what matters. Lauren rested her head on his shoulder. I have a confession. Mom's been giving me updates this whole time. Weekly phone calls about every single thing you were doing. I knew about the expansion. I knew about Congress. I knew about tonight's gala. Martha's a meddler. The best kind. Lauren pulled back to look at him. I wanted to come back so many times, but I needed to finish what I started there. I needed to prove to myself that I could do it. And then I needed to come back. Because I chose to, not because I failed. You didn't fail. You succeeded. And then you came home. To you, Lauren said. I came home to you. They stood there holding each other as the November wind picked up, carrying the last of autumn's leaves across the plaza. Around them, the city hummed with life cars and voices and music drifting from open windows. This city that had broken Jude down and built him back up. This city that had taken everything and given him even more in return. So what happens now? Lauren asked. Jude thought about it. Now we get married. Now we keep building programs and helping people. Now we prove that the best investment anyone can make is in human kindness. That's a good plan. It's the only plan I've got. Lauren laughed, and the sound was like coming home. She reached into her purse one more time and pulled out the framed $20 bill. What should we do with this? Jude took it, studying the bill that had started everything. I think we should donate it to the foundation. Frame it on the wall with a plaque that says where it all began, so everyone who walks through those doors knows that even the smallest act of kindness can change the world. Perfect, Lauren said. They walked back toward the office building, hand in hand, the framed bill tucked under Jude's arm. As they passed the Haven, Jude saw the lights still on. Through the window, he could see Ben serving late-night coffee to a few people who had nowhere else to go. Want to stop in? He asked Lauren. Always. They pushed through the door, and Ben looked up from behind the counter. When he saw them together, his face broke into the biggest smile Jude had ever seen. Well, well, Ben said. Look who decided to come home. Hi, Ben, Lauren said. Got any coffee for a future Mrs. Brooks? For you always. Ben started pouring 2 cups. You two finally figured it out, huh? Finally. Jude agreed. They sat at one of the long tables drinking coffee that tasted like hope and possibility. Around them, the people who'd found shelter at the Haven for the night were settling in. Jude recognized a few faces, people who'd used Wheels of Hope, people who were fighting their way back from rock bottom, just like he once had. You know what the best part is, Lauren said quietly. We get to do this together now. All of it. The work, the life, everything. Together, Jude echoed. He raised his coffee cup. To second chances. To $20 investments, Lauren added, clinking her cup against his. To kindness, Ben said, joining the toast with his own cup. They drank to all of it, to second chances and small investments and the radical act of choosing kindness when the world expected cruelty. They drank to the people they'd been and the people they'd become. They drank to the future they'd build together. Outside, the city settled into its nighttime rhythm. But inside the Haven, surrounded by people who knew what it meant to be lost and found again, Jude Brooks felt something he'd never thought possible on that cold November night 2.5 years ago. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, and for the first time in his life, he felt like he was home.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.